All right, so it looks like we are live. I am very pleased to be talking with Teri Michaud today, author of Where Are All the Kids, which we just released. It's
Mm,
wonderful to see you, Teri.
It's wonderful to see you as well.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear from you in your own words what inspired you to write your book.
hmm I've always wanted to write this story. I thought my childhood was very interesting, if nothing else. At one point in the book, I'm in second grade and I cried, and I don't remember why, and my teacher couldn't remember why, but my family was going through some bad trauma. And I also was a pretty good artist as a kid, so I drew a lot. So I think the reading and the writing and the drawing was sort of my coping mechanism. But I
Mm,
always wanted to do my mother's story because I thought it was so impactful and she was so resourceful. The bravery that she dealt with and the tragedies that she went through. And she was just kind of a positive person most of
mm,
the time. She got tougher as she got older, but at first she was just so determined to do right by us kids that I thought that story needed to be told.
mm,
So I took some classes underwriting and I'm writing it undergrad, and one teacher, he just kind of rode me all semester, and then at the end he called me up to his desk and he said, "Have you thought about being a writer?" And I was like, "Oh no, no!" I was like, "Totally no, I can't do that." So I went into teaching, and I've been writing all little things throughout, things for the school newspaper and travel logs for the Hartford Courant or the West Hartford News, and but nothing big. And I remember one Christmas we were all together. We were, in our 30s or 40s, and someone said, "If you could do anything you want," I said, "I'd like to be in a cabin in the woods and write this book."
mm.
Well, that never happened. I never had to be in a cabin in the woods. The only thing I had to do was retire. So when I retired, that was my plan to get this on paper. But shortly after I retired, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So that kind of pushed it back a little too. And then
Mhm.
finally, I started joining classes at the Storyteller's Cottage in Simsbury.
Mm,
That was great because that was the first time I had a real coach. And she was so gentle with all of us and so smart, so kind. And so going back to her class every week was so much fun. I loved it
mm,
and met nice people.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I want to talk about some of the themes in the book so that people know some of the struggles that you experienced and
Mhm.
that your family experienced, and really how triumphant it was with your mother, what she had to do to hold your family together. I
Mhm.
know we talk about some of the themes of alcoholism with your father, who it really seems from reading it was trying, trying,
Yeah.
giving it a go, but having a really hard time keeping it together, and what your mother needed to do to have a large family that was large because of the Catholic upbringing and the requirements
Right.
of that. And it must have been so, I don't know, what was it like to write this from, because how old were you when the things in this book took place?
Between 2 and 8.
Right.
Two and
So
eight. So it's a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, it's a long time. What was that like for you to piece together and write that piece of your life?
Well, when you're a baby, you don't really know and you think everything's normal. And it's not until you start, I don't know, being 4 or 5 or 6 that you're paying attention. And what I noticed is I didn't notice it right away, but the older kids did that. My dad would be erratic. And for a long time, my mother and father tried to hide all this from us, that they were fighting because of his alcoholism. And they
Mm,
weren't even calling it that then. And nobody thought of it as a disease or an addiction. They just thought you're weak, you know?
mhm, mhm,
And my dad wasn't a weak guy. He was strong and he was a hard worker. He was funny as hell. He was kind to strangers. He played well with us. But I didn't know as part of that playing well with us is fueled by being drunk. So we thought he was a riot. And my mother was like, "Stop, stop, stop running around the house and throwing them in the pools and jumping out of trees with them." So I did talk to one of my aunts who's now 90, and she thought that some of my grandparents being around were overbearing for my dad. So he was sort of like, "Oh, I'll go earn the money." And then my mother's mother would give her money, or her father would drop by and plant a tree for her. So I think he had less and less self-confidence as time went on. And as he became more addicted and less dependent, she got stronger. And part of her strength was she wasn't going to sweat the little details. She wasn't going to pull you in for a hug and tell you she loved you. She wasn't going to put a band-aid on your finger. If you got a band-aid, go get it yourself, put it on, don't bother me. And it was this kind of strict, curt upbringing. But she was a great reader, loved language, sang to us, took us on picnics. And if it was raining, she took you for a walk. And if you went under a tree, she'd pull the branches down and all the rain would fall on you and you'd laugh. I mean, she was a very fun and funny person. Someone that had to get tucked away when she got to the end of her rope with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the rope with my dad was when he lost all their money and the house they had built together was going to go into foreclosure. And she absolutely was not having it. So with that and the way he had been treating us with, hitting us on the back of our legs with a ruler or pushing her around or whatever, she kicked him out. And when people say they kick someone out, I mean, she took his clothing and put it in his truck. She gave him 2 pots and 2 pans. She gave him an ashtray. She gave him a photo album. I mean, she said, like, all the things you need to live for the next couple of weeks is in your truck. And when he came home from work, he had gone to work with another guy. He said, "What's with my truck, Bob?" And she said, "You're moving out." And he said, "No, we're not. We never talked about it." She said, "We have talked about it all the time." And he said, "No, only you've talked about it. I'm not going anywhere."
Mm.
But he did. He got in his truck and he drove away and he had nowhere to go, nowhere to go. So he sat outside the parking lot at the airport. And then when he came back home, he just parked his truck in the driveway and fell asleep there in the, blankets and pillows she had left him.
Mm.
When he came by in the morning, came to the door, he was very polite, back to his old polite self. And he knocked on the door and said, "May I come in?" And she said, "No, you may not." So it escalated from there because he didn't go gently into the night. But we also needed him. We needed him for rides and we needed his paltry child support and we needed, him to take us to the hospital when we had stitches. So he didn't go away, but he wasn't with us anymore. And when he left, my mother realized that she couldn't maintain this house without his income. She had a little part-time job. And so that's when she decided to give us all away, 6 kids, find friends, families that would take us in for the rest of the school year, which was all of June, and we had to stay in district. So 2 or 3 went in the neighborhood. My sister Carol went to her favorite aunt's house. My baby brother Sean went to another aunt's house down the beach. I went to our insurance agent's house. I hardly knew this guy. And the daughter I didn't know at all. She was a year older than me, but we were in the same school. And they had like a really crowded house because he did his business out of his house. They were pretty religious. And I slept in the same room with Trisha. And she was, of course, a very nice person. But she went to bed with a glow in the dark Mary, like a,
Oh, yeah.
so I was like, "What do you do with that?" And then when all my brothers and sisters met up again at school, we'd compare the houses we were in. Like, what did you eat? And what does the dad do? How come the mother doesn't sing when she's doing, laundry? And, just you have to learn all these things when you're a guest at someone else's house. And at that point, we were pretty quiet, pretty polite children. We do get more and more rambunctious as time goes on to actually pretty rotten, but not yet.
I the way that you talk about your parents is so understanding and compassionate. And I wonder if some of this, like when you started writing, was it more angry or did that evolve? Or just, I'm curious if there was a way you felt about them or things you understood or saw differently through the writing process.
Yes. For me, it was I always knew I needed to be attached to my mother. Had to know that she loved me, and I did. And I slowly began to not like my dad as a little kid. And by the time I was in 3rd grade, I did not like him and did not want to spend any time with him. So, when I was a teenager, I said I hated him and who cares? And it's better if he's just dead and that sort of thing. And that was my take on it. My sister Carol, who was the oldest, she really loved our dad and wanted to be his buddy and forgave him. And then she pulled away from the family, after she got married, she moved to another state. And my youngest brother and youngest sister don't really know the bad Bob. They just,
Mm.
he was kind of a fun guy because now he's just visiting on Sundays. He's just coming over on Sundays.
Mhm.
When I'm writing this thing, I'm actually writing it on the desk. My dad, it was an antique desk, and he got it out of a house he was working on. They gave it to him, sold it to him, and he brought it home, and she had it in her living room. That was the only piece of furniture in that living room for 12 years, one
Mm.
desk and a chair.
Mm.
So when my mom died a few years back, she gave that desk to my sister Noreen, who's never written a thing. No, she did. I'm sorry. She wrote a beautiful Mother's Day thing in the Current.
Mhm.
But I asked Noreen if I could have the desk, and she said yes.
Mhm.
So the desk is
Oh.
here in my dining room, and that's where I started writing this. And one of the things that really affected me when I was writing this is my mother and father loved each other. They loved each other for a long, long time, even after all the hurt. So she didn't get rid of him because she was, mad at him or whatever. She just wanted to protect us. So they split up, and they didn't get divorced. They were married for 12 years, and I don't think they got divorced until 12 years after that. And my dad had just told her he was getting remarried, and my mom said, "That's fine, Bob, but you gotta divorce me first." So he was
Missed a little step there.
yeah, little step he forgot to take. So he did. He married a nice lady, and actually, the youngest two did go down and visit him in Florida, to where he moved.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so he was a better dad to them, which was one of my mom's hopes.
Mhm.
I never got close with him. In fact, my sister Noreen invited him to her wedding, and we all had to introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Teri. This is my husband. This is my daughter. Things like that.
Mm.
But he was
Mm.
polite, and
Mhm.
so writing at that desk and writing about my dad, I know he was hurt inside as an alcoholic, and
Mhm.
that's what made it so hard for him.
Right.
Probably hard for me right now.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you've written an amazing book. It's very inspirational and shows a lot of the nuances of what that's
Mm.
like, right? It's, you don't sugarcoat things, but you do show this loving compassion to your family, and it's creatively written because it reads like a fiction story, even though this is all based on things that really happened.
Yes.
It reads like a gripping fiction story. So um, I I I'd really love if you would read the epilogue.
Oh, sure.
I already started crying. I'm going to cry again when you read this
Oh no.
epilogue, but
Oh
I'm
no.
willing to cry to let people hear this epilogue.
Okay, here's the
um,
epilogue.
yeah.
Here's the book. Okay. My dining room has 3 walls of windows. In one corner is the antique desk my father gave to my mother 60 years ago. On it are pictures of my mother, my sisters, and my brothers and me. I type at my cluttered table using 2 or 3 notebooks at a time, and none is devoted to one task, topic, or idea. I must edit sentences for my book. The doctor's appointments are waiting to be posted on my wall calendar. Theaters and their showtimes are scribbled on mailing lists. I am about to have my first book published, and I am getting overwhelmed by all that I have to do. Over my neighbor's yard, I saw a bald eagle flying with some small mammal in its talons. It was plowing right toward my biggest window, so I jumped up and out of its way. It lifted up like a jet on a short runway, so I hustled to my back deck, hoping it had landed on my roof. The eagle was gone. I mentioned this to my friend Jimmy Beatty. He said it was my mother's spirit animal trying to get in touch. Look it up, he said, and see what she is trying to tell you. Bald eagles are symbols of strength, courage, and freedom. They are fierce birds that can overcome any challenge. Other words used to describe these majestic animals include focus, tenacity, and embracing new beginnings. I have been writing for 4 years about my mother's difficult split from my father to keep their 6 children safe from his addictions that led to his violence. The poverty, loneliness, and grief that tortured her made her stronger. And yes, my book will be completed soon. No, not soon, today. Thanks for flying by, Ma.
Oh, thank you. I love that so much because when you read that description of the eagle,
Mm,
just what that symbol means, like the tenacity, the strength, the just courage that your mother had to have at a time when it was very difficult to
yeah.
have any kind of, autonomy or independence or get a job or get an apartment that would take, all these kids, right? The things she had to
Yeah.
do to make that happen
Yeah.
is so beautiful. And you've written a beautiful, in a way, tribute to her and to everything that she did to make this life
Yeah.
possible for you all.
Hmm.
So anything else that you want to say to our
Um,
audience?
a couple of things. One is that she really wanted us to be friends and to stay connected. And we have, where I'm still very good friends with all my siblings. We're between 62 and 72. So we all still get in touch, um, hang out with the core of them all the time.
Mm,
And the other thing that was important with her is, as a woman, get a career so you can support any family you end up with. So we all did
mm,
that. Marry somebody you could rely on. We've all been married over 40 years.
wow.
Um, and the other thing is have a home. Have a
Mm,
home. You don't have to own it, but you have to have stability to raise children. So she
mm,
made us sleep in the same bed every night, sit at the same chair every night, use your fork, pass the potatoes and say thank you and say grace and all these things. Even as she was separating out from the church, she still was
mm,
using some of the tenets of the Catholicism.
mm,
So her, it was really kind of just be stable, just
mm,
be as stable as you can be, and do the best you can to raise your kids.
mm.
So
Yeah,
that,
that consistency, I can see that is so important for kids, that like
yeah,
here's the thing that's like that I can
right,
rely on. It makes such
yeah.
a difference for
Hmm.
children to navigate all the things, because the world is changing all around us
It's
every
all
day.
around
So if
us.
you can
Yeah.
have that consistency, it can make a big difference for folks.
Hmm.
So what, I know you have a website. Do you want to share what that is? Do you want, or
It's just going live today, I believe.
mhm,
My daughter has developed that for me. It's Teri Writes.
okay.
Um, I don't have books available through it that yet, but I've
Hmm.
ordered them. So mainly I'm saying to people, go on Amazon to get this for now. And then when I start doing book talks and that sort of thing, I'll have, books on hand. So that's what I'm doing with that. There should be a couple of endorsements from people who've read the book on both sides at this point. So I hope so.
Nice. And it is available right now in paperback and ebook, and you can find it easily by just typing in "Where Are All the Kids" on
Where are all the
Amazon,
kids?
and it shows up. So um, yes, thank you so much for having the courage to write this story and putting it out there and to share it with other people, and being public about it. And thank you for creating with me. It's been an absolute joy to do
Yes,
this
it
with you,
has. Thank
Teri. We
you.
have had fun. I know.
Yeah,
So have a wonderful day, and thank you for taking the time to
thank
talk about
you.
your book.
It's been great. Thanks.
Take care.